Hey, look, it's Artery Pay. And who better to talk about Artery Pay than our pal, Ashley Elsner? Welcome back to Green Rush Live. I'm Jimmy Young, filling in for David Rabinovitz, who is on assignment on vacation, I believe, heading south to South Carolina. And we also welcome in Eric Kaufman from Dama Financial. So we're going to start with Ashley. Ashley, tell us about Artery Pay, and then we'll go to Eric. Go ahead.
Artery Pay provides payments for the cannabis space via digital wallet and bank systems. So the automated clearinghouse system, which is much fewer moving parts. So easier to prove that what we're doing is clean. And we also have built the regulatory technology that's required to provide these services into our transaction system. So you've got a fintech regtech that is basically providing the Venmo for cannabis that makes it very, very easy for banks to say yes to the money. Very neat process.
There you go. Eric, it's always a challenge, but tell us a little bit about your company, which seems to be in every periodical I see. It's got a good brand. People know it. How's it going there?
Well, thanks, Jimmy. I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on, and Ashley and Christopher, pleasure to be here with both of you. It's going great. A little bit of background. So Dama Financial is the nation's largest provider of access to banking and financial services to the cannabis industry. What we do is we find FDIC insured banks that want to bank cannabis. But given that it's such a high risk category, they're not necessarily equipped to do so. So they partner with us to run that program on their behalf. And as an agent of the bank, we oversee all of the compliance, the BSA, AML, KYC, help with the reporting, walk with them hand in hand through their federal bank examinations. That's one side of the program. And then through that, we're able to offer a suite of services. And that includes everything from access to a bank account, interest earning account, bill pay, B2B invoicing and payments, armor card, cash pickup and processing, merchant processing, lending. We have an integrated payroll solution, and continue to grow and evolve and add products and services, some unique to this industry, but also with the flexibility to service the industry. So as you said, yes, we are kind of everywhere right now, and it's been a great 3 years since we've been live in market.
There you go. Christopher, since you are our California representative on Weed Talk News and the American Cannabis Report, there are challenges, as you know, in your state. It's the biggest market in the country. You've got a vibrant legacy market in the Emerald Triangle. This is still a cash crop, and yet there are now some ways, like Ashley's Artery Pay, like Eric's Dama Financial, that can ease the burden of keeping books that are supposed to be all cash. What's your observation? And are these dispensaries that are legal entities in California, are they starting to take advantage of these services?
You know what I'd like to actually do, maybe just a little bit differently, but to hopefully answer your question is, there's obviously two sides of the financial problems with using cash only, right? There's the consumer problems of having to bring cash and not being able to use their debit card or a credit card, et cetera. But there's got to be also the whole other host of problems that we don't hear as much about on the side of the dispensaries and the consumer facing businesses, right? There's like a whole host of other issues. I would love to actually ask Ashley and Eric both, so if you talk to a dispensary client, what are the problems they're trying to solve? And and similarly, if you talk to a bank client who's nervous about getting into cannabis, what are the problems you can solve for them also? So I'd love to hear those two business to business kind of issues, if you don't mind.
Eric, why don't you go first, and then Ashley go second? Go ahead.
Sure. I mean, if we step back and we say, just use kind of common sense, say in your everyday life, if you removed your bank account, how would you operate? Just forget a business, just your personal everyday life.
Sure.
How would you pay your bills? How would you pay for gasoline? How would you pay your taxes? How would you buy stamps, right? All these basic things. If you take all of that out and you try to run your personal life, now factor that into business, trying to pay payroll, having to go to City Hall every month. I mean, it's just a incredibly cumbersome process. And one of the things that continues to drive the illicit market, right, with the overcompliance, the taxation, and just the day-to-day struggles. So some of the things that you're seeing, one product that I neglected to mention, but I think particularly at the retail level, you're seeing a lot, in terms of theft, whether it's employee theft or external theft, so you could solve that with a smart safe. And the smart safe is bolted to the ground. When the money goes in, it's insured. We provide provisional credit. So when you deposit the funds into the safe, you have access to it into your bank account next business day. So just, quicker access to your own funds. And so I think you have just your everyday, day-to-day struggles. And then you have kind of the bigger headline news struggles, but there's so much below the headlines that is just challenging to running a business if you don't have access to transparent, compliant banking.
Sure. Ashley, what do you think about, are you hearing some of the same things or?
It's definitely a challenge. I think one of the bigger challenges that we face actually as financial providers in the space is being able to clearly help the dispensaries and other cannabis businesses understand how they're required to run their company in terms of the financial services and products that they use.
Okay.
Very, very tricky one, because of course they feel like they're exactly the same as every other business, and but for a stupid federal prohibition, they would be. Actually, the only market that's not able to go to the international market for high risk processing, they're the only industry that can't use credit card processing directly, and frankly, the systems that are doing it in an indirect fashion don't use them. They're like, if you can't do it directly, it's legally not okay for you to do it indirectly. That's true with financial products as it is
Right.
with, deciding that you're going to put a head out on your spouse, right? It's the exact same thing.
Frowned upon.
Yeah, and so it's more than frowned upon. The thing is, like, there's substantial risks that they're actually taking on as a result of the fact that they can't get adequate support in the financial services industry, and a lot of that actually comes from exactly what Eric and I work on, which is getting the banks to be more open to working with the cannabis space. But yeah, there's theft, but there's also the security issues. Frankly, it's actually an issue for the community if you have rashes of thefts going on in the community, because a lot of them are probably going to be perpetrated at gunpoint. And you're talking about big money. You're talking about also access to product, which has a street value. Basically, it's a double whammy. You're not just stealing the money. You can take that. They're basically knocking over a pharmacy with a cash vault.
Right.
It's very, very problematic because they get a double whammy where the money is stolen as well as what they're trying to sell. So they're, from an insurance perspective, the insurance is much more expensive in cannabis. And even some of the financial service provisions, well, part of that is really unavoidable because it's much more expensive to provide financial services to the space, but it's also very, very difficult to secure things like cash. So it is very, very important to actually get them onto a digital payments platform that's not shenanigans.
Not shenanigans.
Great.
Yeah.
Shenanigans. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're making a great case for why, I think it's Ed Perlmutter, who put out the safe banking bill in the first place. It's a public safety issue is what his argument
It
has always
100%
been.
is.
Right?
100% is.
Yeah. So now here's an interesting. So the Fresh Toast put out an article about how the Biden administration's impact on the cannabis industry so far. And they're making a claim here that the Biden administration has also created a framework to make it easier for banks to do business with marijuana related businesses. Eric, are they making it easy for you?
But look at, at the end of the day, it's a high risk category.
Yeah.
And even once it's federally legal at some point in time, it will still be a high risk category. No different than online gaming or gaming in general, or alcohol or tobacco, firearms, right? And so at some point it will be federally legal, but it'll still be a high risk category. Right now, it has some teeth into how you're supposed to do it, right? We have the Cole memo and we have the FinCEN guidelines. So is it gotten more definitive since those? Not so much, but even once it's federally legal, you'll still have financial institutions that are hesitant to get into it because inherently banks are risk averse and conservative. That's their business, right? So It will always be a high risk category, probably the highest of high risk, in our lifetime. And, even if you look at it now, prohibition, which ended over a century ago, there's still only a handful of banks, major banks, that bank it on any scale. And that's because a dog has just made a guest appearance and a cameo into our podcast here.
Wait, not just any
Sorry,
dog.
he had an opinion he wanted to express. Sorry.
Sorry. And by the way, Eric, just so you know, while we're in this Zoom room, okay, and we could see each other, the show is being switched by my man, Dan French. So sometimes the audience doesn't get the fact that the dog actually made an appearance. Okay, just for clarity.
We did have a cameo for those who didn't see. A very cute dog has joined Ashley on screen.
Dan did a good job of directing. He punched it up, and now where's Keanu? Come on, make another appearance, Ashley. There we go.
Keanu. Perfect.
And Keanu, and that dog travels with Ashley because she needs that dog alongside, right?
Yes, he's my service dog.
Perfect.
There you go.
My
There you
son
go.
has one also. Well, not different dog, but same purpose.
Yeah, he's highly portable, and he's a very, very nice little guy, and he has a lot of opinions and really, really loves the cannabis industry. He says that everybody who does cannabis is his friend. He says, and he supports the industry.
He's very articulate for a dog.
Yeah, he's very articulate. He speaks unbelievable.
He speaks very well for a dog that never says anything.
Fantastic.
Christopher, you got anything? I've got a technical situation that I've got to address. So just for like 30 seconds, I'm getting a little signal that perhaps the AC adapter that drives the camera that I'm looking at may not be plugged in properly. So Christopher, this is a great opportunity for you to just kind of take over for a couple of seconds as I step off camera. And this is good stuff. This is behind the scenes stuff, right? I just have to make
no
sure.
one will ever know. No one will ever know what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. But actually, I think people like to know the fact. This is what happens when you do live talk shows. You have to be fair with your audience because they know something's going on, right? So anyway,
Yes.
Go ahead, Christopher. 30 seconds. You're the host. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to host for 30 seconds, and I'm going to say I'm surprised just on a personal level that I'm still hanging it together because I got my booster shot yesterday, and I felt like I've been stoned ever since, and I haven't done anything, but everything's a little loopy. So anyway.
I got mine last week too.
Oh, yay. That's
Vaccinations. Thumbs up.
Eric. How you doing, Eric? You boosted?
I got my third about 3-4 weeks ago. So I am good.
Look at us all doing the right thing.
There we go. And there's
You
Jimmy.
vaccinated? Are you vaccinated, bud? He says he's vaccinated.
Vaccinated. Good.
Are you chipped? It's chipped.
We were, I was at Hall of Flowers the last couple days, and they were great and being very diligent in checking, making sure everybody's wearing masks and vaccination. It's a great show. They did a
Excellent.
really
Excellent. And is Hall of Flowers? Is it mostly? It's mostly for cultivators and retail, or mostly cultivators, or I mean, how do you guys fit in there?
It's mostly for brands and dispensaries and buyers.
Okay, good.
They have some ancillary business services, which is where we fit in. But primarily brands and buyers. This was the first time they did it in Palm Springs. Santa Rosa was earlier in the year.
Sure.
And it was a great show. A little smaller, just one hall, which I actually thought was fantastic because it was more compact. You were able to see everybody. A little more serendipity of physically bumping into people that or you've been trying to meet. So it was great.
It's not bad. How do you guys feel about the new deal that just closed with, or I don't know about closed, but whatever, the Harborside Loud Pack Urban Leaf deal, a big consolidation going on here?
I think it's a sign of what's coming down the pike. I think we're going to see a lot more of that, and I think it's great. Three wonderful companies that have come together. They're best in class, and I think it's good for all the people at those companies. And again, I think it's a sign of what we're going to see to come. I think there's going to be a lot of consolidation, either out of necessity or strategic opportunities.
So now that I'm back, I do have a question about that. Is the strength of the MSOs and these merger and acquisitions that continue to happen, is this a good thing for the industry? And what impact does it have on social equity applicants, the people that want to have an opportunity to get into this business and because they've been victims of the failed war on drugs. So is our acquisitions good for the industry? And I all three of you probably have opinions about that.
I'd like to
Ashley, go
propose a
ahead.
solution where actually, these could be really good, because one of the things that these large MSOs could actually do is provide incubators for some of the social equity applicants. So, Harborside has been incredibly active with the Last Prisoner Project and things like that. And so social equity is definitely something that is top of mind with them. So I would expect them to bring some of that thunder to the rest of the organizations as well. Certainly, since they do a lot more of the retail, publicly facing types of things in there. So they'd be very well positioned to actually help promote social equity programs through businesses actually developing incubator programs for social equity. And I actually think that that you could see some really great opportunities come up in that way if they were willing to, kind of put forward that. I don't know that it's coming quickly, but I feel like they could go there. And I think some of them will.
There you go. Eric, what's your feeling? Certainly from your perspective, I'm guessing that you guys have a decent part of the market and you welcome these kinds of acquisitions, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, I think whether you do or don't, they're happening. And I think it's kind of the natural evolution or maturation of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think it's a good thing. It's fairly fragmented. When you look on the tech side of the industry, there are a lot of integrations, but I put that in quotes because they're not real integrations. They don't create a seamless, great customer experience. And with the M&A activity, I think you're going to see a lot of that improve, a lot more streamlined, integrated solutions that benefit not just the dispensaries or the cultivators, but also the end consumer. So I think that's good. I think it'll create a lot of value for the industry. And I think, what Ashley was saying, there's a tremendous amount of merit to that. Because if you can consolidate that, you can rally around it to really drive change. And we've done the industry as a whole has done a terrible job, in my opinion, on the social equity front. We got a lot of positive headline news followed by negative headline news because we haven't made good on the promise. And you give a social equity applicant a license, but don't equip them with the tools or the capital or the resources to execute, then you're just setting someone up for failure.
Absolutely.
And it's
Exactly right.
it's been terrible.
You're talking about a heavily regulated industry. So frankly, the consolidations are necessary because it's very, very expensive to make sure, I mean, everybody on here can say it's very expensive to run a compliant business in a regulated space, period. Eric and I can talk about that all day because finance is heavily, heavily regulated. Like whatever financial product or service you're trying to offer, each of them have their own rules. And the same is true for cannabis, which is, if we're being really honest about it, it's mini pharma. It's a state regulated, pharmaceutical-ish product, regardless of whether it's recreational or medical. I mean, it's still being used primarily for, well, I shouldn't say primarily, but I would say that, okay, this my buddy has decided he's done. He lost interest. He was like, meh. Regulation, meh. It's like, I'd rather talk about social equity. Me too. But there's a lot of, it's difficult. And one of the things that people fail to understand about the cannabis space with how heavily regulated it is that makes it incredibly expensive to operate in the space in a legitimate way. And generally speaking, if you're talking about somebody who's coming from a background that isn't a business background, it can be challenging to run a business that's not regulated. I mean, just a regular retail business on Amazon, that can be challenging in and of itself. And then you're slapping on top of it, a bunch of regulations where it's like, oh my gosh, I have to read through what, and it says what, and I'm supposed to do what from that? How am I supposed to parse this out into what I'm supposed to do? How am I supposed to get the systems that I need that are appropriate to the needs of my business that are actually going to satisfy these requirements? Do they? I can't really tell. I mean, how do I tell the difference between tech provider A and tech provider B? Sure. And the things that Eric and I have certainly run into quite a bit, I'm sure, I would assume that you guys have run into this a lot as well, is people misunderstanding that just because you want a specific service doesn't mean that I can always give it to you. And that has to do with the laws and regulations that apply to the financial space, right? So, I mean, it's an exercise in really extreme levels of maturity to operate in a regulated space.
I want to mention what's going on in the chat room right now. We have a cannabis celebrity chatting it up with David, who I don't know if he's on. I don't know if he's at 30,000 feet or he's still in the terminal. I'm not quite sure. But Captain Hooter is in the chat room. And if those of you who don't know who Captain Hooter is, he has written the definitive guide to the Amsterdam cafes. And like every single one of them he's gone to, and has always been kind of a cult hero in the cannabis community. And I know he's watching because I just talked to him about an hour and a half ago. So we want to welcome Captain Hooter into the chat room. Now we can get back to this. So here's a question for you guys and my two financial experts here. Are we ever going to see Amex, Discover, Visa, MasterCard, or does it have to be federally legal to ease those issues? Am I right?
For credit, I would say that you have to have a change at the federal level and the legal side.
Okay.
I don't
All
know
right.
whether it would be safe banking that would bring them in. I sincerely doubt it.
Right.
Because one of the challenges that you actually have in providing financial services in a legal way in this industry, as it stands because of the federal prohibition, is that actually you have to treat each state market independently.
Right.
You have to have systems that allow you to keep those transactions all cordoned off in that individual state. And none of the major providers, including the big, so none of the consumer brands, whether you're talking about Wells Fargo, Bank of America, or you're talking about Visa, MasterCard, Amex, none of them are set up to operate in a state-by-state basis. So it would be almost impossible for them to legally be able to provide the service based on their current operational setup. And it's, again, if they're dealing with a state-by-state basis, it's very hard to make the financial argument to make the changes to your systems, because that's going to be an extremely expensive overhaul. Eric and I are lucky because we got to build our systems from scratch. So it was very easy for us to come in and basically apply best current technology to these problems. And also, with our knowledge of the financial space, be able to set it up in a way that eases our regulatory burdens and makes it a more streamlined flow. And it is applicable to other high risk spaces, but not in this way, because they don't have the lack of interstate commerce support because we're not allowed to give it.
Right.
So,
Do you mind if I ask a quick question to Eric? Just if I can just pop in there, which is a lot of people's, of course, the reason that cannabis and banking are so problematic is because cannabis is on Schedule 1, right? Is there a schedule level that would allow banking to open up, or does it need to be descheduled entirely? I'm not sure where we are.
I don't. Well, one, I agree with Ashley. I don't think the Safe Banking Act is going to impact that for Visa, MasterCard, and the like. I think it has to be both federally legal and descheduled. Descheduled to which level, I don't know, but it's definitely not Schedule 1.
Right,
So it
for
has
sure.
to
Or
be
two.
scheduled. And
Or
I
two, yeah.
think it's probably 2. I think you're right, at least 2. And so
Three,
no,
actually,
no.
three. One more down. One more
Right.
down. Yeah,
least
but
three.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's very, that gets overly technical.
yes, until both those things happen, I don't see the card companies getting involved.
We're stuck. Okay. Yeah.
They kind of can't. Just based on their operations, they just kind of can't.
Yeah. Too much paperwork, too many forms, too many.
And to be clear,
No. It's a systems overhaul. They have to change their entire systems to actually be able to support it on a state-by-state basis, which they honestly, that's a really, really expensive proposition.
Oh, so they don't like expensive.
And
Only
yet,
expensive incoming.
Sorry, I'm a fintech person. No, they're not very good about wanting to adopt new systems.
but also as big as this industry is to us, think about it from their perspective.
Yeah.
Right. So
Right.
there you go. And just to reiterate what Ashley was alluding to earlier, the Safe Banking Act does not do either of those things.
right.
Okay.
Doesn't deschedule, and it doesn't make it federally legal.
And it's the 280E clause that has the most of the industry strangled because they're not able to write off regular business expenses like any other business would. And so therein lies another problem for getting, excuse me, any movement at the federal level. Excuse me. Go ahead, Christopher. Come on. This is where you step in, buddy.
Well, I think no. What you're saying, what you're suggesting is they need a new revenue enhancer, right, to replace it. Is what you're saying, right? I don't know, gaming. I don't know, something else.
Some people have suggested an excise tax, but like
to me, there's enough variables that there'll be something for everybody, but they haven't come up with the right formula yet, whether it's decriminalization or descheduling it to Schedule 3 or complete federal legalization with a regulatory board. They can't even figure out hemp in Washington, D.C. The FDA still hasn't put out any kind of regulations about hemp, for crying out loud. I do think that they're trying to force the FDA to come up with some regulations for hemp and at the federal level. But we have yet to see anything like that.
Jimmy, you draw a good parallel there with hemp, because even if they legalize cannabis on January 1, it's another 12 to 24 months before everything gets rolled out, right? And as you've seen with hemp, it's been longer. So, it does not happen overnight.
It's a big machine.
Go ahead.
No, it's a big machine. Agreed.
Right.
Agreed.
Well, yeah, but look, I'm of one who's very frustrated with that big machine. Okay, because I think that we're dysfunctional right now as a country. That for some reason, well, we know many reasons, they just can't find middle ground. And here is a medicinal plant that they don't understand. Which is probably the biggest factor in getting anything done in Washington, D.C. You're working with a product that they've been told and grilled for 80 years. They said, oh, this is evil. This is going to be, once you start with cannabis, you're going to end up with some other drugs. And in the meantime, our drug companies continue to push out those opioids to kill the pain that you might have after surgery. So we have a long way to go towards any kind of reform. And I think the first step has to be education of our elected officials. And I don't know about you, Christopher. Have you heard anything about that? Are they taking workshops? Is there homework? Have you done your cannabis homework, Mr. Senator?
I find that most of the politicians seem to have cannabis on a way lower level, obviously, than all of us do. And if you think about, the pandemic and some of the other challenges, those are the things I think they're trying to prioritize. It just doesn't really feel like any kind of really, really strong motivation on the federal level to push forward. And I think it's got the same problem. I mean, this is political a little bit, but it's the same problem it's always had, which is that it doesn't have a champion. Right.
Right.
I've said this before, the different industries that are competitive with, with cannabis on the medicinal side or hemp on the industrial side, each one of those other competitors has a champion. Whether it's, the Confederacy, I suppose, Confederate States in terms of textiles or whatever, all of them have a champion, and cannabis has always lacked a champion. And that's why one of the reasons why I keep getting kicked around.
Right. Well, one of our champions is Dama Financial and Eric Kaufman, who has always been out there for us. And I really appreciate the fact that you're willing to take the time out and come on and talk with us. And I hope in the future we'll get an opportunity to talk more about some of those other activities that are legal in our society, like sports. Okay, and we can actually talk about that too. I know you have a hard out at 5 o'clock. I did see that note fly by me on the screen here in the Zoom room. So we're going to go a little early to our break. So Eric, can make how do people get in touch with you, Eric? Because I know that the more business you have, the better.
Well, thank you for that advertisement. I appreciate that, Jimmy. Sure. It's a pleasure coming on, and looking forward to coming back again. And Christopher and Ashley, great to share the time with you as well.
Love to see you.
Just visit us at damafinancial.com or email me directly at Eric, ERICK at damafinancial.com.
Terrific. Great stuff, man. All right. Thank you. Great to see you. We are going to take a break here, so we'll come back right at the top of the hour. Don't go away. Green Rush Live continues after this.